Hello and welcome everyone to the April Policy Insights. I'm very happy to have back again Brunello Rosa, CEO and founder of Rosa Roubini Associates, and also visiting professor to several universities, Bocconi, Citi, and LSE. Brunello, we're here to talk about what has happened recently in the financial world with the crisis triggered by the SFB situation in the US. And my question would be, how these things could happen and avoided in a digital assets space. To be more precise, let's imagine that, crypto, stable coins, all of these new forms of money adoption becomes wider as it is becoming wider. And in case of a banking crisis, how can you counterbalance this? What could states do?
Yeah, so what we are seeing in the US first and in Switzerland and the Eurozone is that people have lost confidence in the banking system for various reasons. Clearly, the banking crisis in the US and in Switzerland, for example, they are very different. But what is common is that once a bank goes into turmoil, the investors are looking for safety. And where are they looking for safety? Typically, government bonds or some safe haven assets such as the US dollar or gold or the yen, anything that is perceived to be a safe bet. And in the future world, these things will happen as well. And actually, the more dematerialized currencies and money is, the more crisis of confidence can occur, because you keep on asking yourself, where all this is based from? And so in the digital asset world, in which you will have most likely pyramid of crypto at the top as the more risky, more volatile assets, stable coin as the more stable, as the name says, form of assets, and at the very bottom, you need some layer of foundation of trust in this digital asset environment, and that needs to be provided by the government. So in this world of digital assets, where you have this pyramid of assets out there, you need to have CBDCs. You need to have a foundation layer for the trust in digital assets. And this, only the state can provide that. And in this case, it's central bank. So in a world in which this is not the case, you can imagine that people will run to what? Most likely to what is available, and that would be some form of other private sector assets, but they will never have the sort of unlimited trust, so to speak, that public safe haven such as CBDC would have. So in my view, we should call for a quicker, more expedite adoption of CBDCs, not wait longer.
That's very interesting. So this is in the end another use cases, if we want to agree.
Yeah, to some extent, is the one use case that CBDCs will have. So CBDCs will, of course, serve many purposes as well as other digital assets. But there's one case that is irreplaceable, and nobody else can perform that activity. And as I said, it's been the foundation of trust for the entire environment of digital assets. And it is well known in history that most of these revolutions, so to speak, start in a decentralized form. And then eventually, one crisis after another, especially one confidence crisis after another, you realize that you need to centralize, and you need some foundation of trust that derives from some public entity with no vested interest, apart from the continuity of the system. And that's the central bank. So I'm absolutely positive that since you will never stop the growth of stable coins and cryptos one way or the other, you will have to have CBDCs as well as an essential part of this digital asset environment.
That's very good. Absolutely. I think that, it is now also more widely accepted that this is a view that many regulators around the world are coming to. So we can see that there is a more shared also intention of sort of tackling the same problems in the same way at an international level on this, and so this is clearly positive. So shall we comment a little bit further on, how do you see the timeline of this coming up? CBDCs, stablecoins. I mean, we've got two important consultations here at the moment in the United Kingdom, one purely on crypto assets and the future financial services framework, and the other one that touches CBDCs. The one on stablecoins should be on the way. So what is, in your opinion, the timeline here and globally, and also maybe referencing a little bit what's happening in the US at the moment, which seems to be a little bit cracking down?
Yeah, so the adoption, it doesn't seem to be as fast as desirable. It's clearly continuing on this further work, and as you said, there's been an acceleration, especially in the US and in the UK. However, you cannot recover and catch up the 10 years of work that the Chinese have put into this in 10 months. There is certain time that needs to be spent to solve some of the most pressing legal and technical issues, and therefore I can understand why you cannot compress 10 years in one. But can we do in two? Can we do in three? I don't know if we can, but we must, because Chinese have already rolled out their ECNY. It will be widely used sooner rather than later. And in our case, instead, in the UK, we are talking about the so-called second half of the decade. Second half of the decade means that if you're lucky, 2025, could be 2026. And unfortunately could also be 2029 or 2030. So we have no time to waste. It's a question of making sure that as this world of digital assets increases, as the metaverse becomes more and more common knowledge and common use, as AI continues to make this massive progress that we have seen in the last few years, you do need a strong public presence in this digital environment. And the way you establish this presence and this concept of sovereignty, after all, we are talking about digital sovereignty here, is by establishing CBDCs. Now, can you do it fast and wrong? And is that better than slow and right? If you put it that way, clearly people would say, no, it's better to do it right and fast. I understand that. But do we need to have it perfect? Or is it enough to have it well enough, good enough, faster than otherwise? I think the second case is preferable. You will solve some of the inevitable issues that will emerge, some of the potential mistakes that are made, clearly, over time. I mean, think about how we came up with the currency as we have in our hands. It took decades. If you really want to make a long story, it took centuries, but it took decades in modern era to pass from the various issuer of currency that we had. Remember, commercial banks could issue their own currency, and then you have multiple banking crises, and then you realize that the only way people can ever trust a piece of paper to be worth something if it's issued by the state. And so eventually the central bank was born. It didn't happen in 1 year, it taken in several years, if not decades, as I was saying. And so in this case as well, I understand that there are steps that need to be made, mistakes to be avoided for sure. But if you have something out, it's better than having nothing if it's not perfect. That's my view.
Absolutely agree also because regulation requirements and all these things come in a sort of learning by doing approach because
Yes.
nothing is perfect. So what do you think, why do you think that we are still not enough? What's really blocking this moving forward? Is an lack of understanding, is a complexity, is a sort of inaction. We can't really say inaction, but like sort of on purpose slow. Like what do you feel? What do you think?
Well, several elements. First of all, there are some really complex issues that is not easy to solve from a technological perspective, from a legal perspective, from even a societal perspective, meaning you need to make them acceptable, especially when you know that there will be a violation to some extent, let's be clear about that, of some privacy, in the sense that CBDCs will never be as anonymous as a piece of paper, of course, by definition, even if only the authorities will be able to eventually unveil the identity behind the transaction, so on and so forth. In reality, at some point, you can always track it. So clearly there are concerns about privacy and all the rest of it. But all this can be solved. And actually, people realize how much they are willing to give up in terms of privacy every day, Google to Facebook to Instagram and so on, and they don't question, right? Seems kind of strange that all these issues are kind of coming up for CBDCs. So there are technical issues, there are political issues, there are societal issues, there are various bits that can be solved, but there's a special lack of urgency. People don't realize why it's so important to go fast. And typically urgency comes with crisis. We're not at that crisis point yet. But it will come as soon as you will see that one crisis will be much faster solved by the issuance of CBDC. Maybe the Chinese will face, maybe the world will face a situation that the Chinese are able to solve much faster by using ECNY. And if we don't, then, oh, there's this Sputnik moment, as people put it. It says, oh, there's really time to start rolling our sleeves and catch up. I mentioned Sputnik moment exactly for that reason. There was this race to the space between Soviet Union and the US in the 50s, 60s, and so on. But until the Soviets put on first the first satellite, then first animal, Laika, then the first human being, Yuri Gagarin, the Americans didn't realize the urgency that they had to catch up. Eventually they did. To some extent, they won the race, the moon. So this is the same thing. The Chinese have already shown that they are way ahead of that. People say, who cares? This is a domain we are not interested until they will be interested, and they will realize how fast they need to catch up. Maybe there would be a crisis moment, God knows when, God knows how, that will convince people that having a CBDC out there from their own country is the right solution. And so the sooner, the better.
One last question, Brunello. CBDCs, stable coins, one versus the another one, or all together?
I'm a strong believer, as you know, that they will coexist. There's no reason why they should not coexist. There will be two different things. As I was saying, this pyramid, CBDCs would be the foundations, and they're not going to be used for anything else. Sure, there would be programmable money. Sure, there would be, we'll have at some point characteristics that we don't have with cash, and that's the positive aspect of it. But I don't see a widespread adoption, for example, for speculative reasons. If people want to make speculation, that's where you have to use other form of digital assets, and typically crypto and stable coins. Stable coins, in my opinion, will be the new form of commercial bank money. As we know, money comes in two forms: central bank money and commercial bank money. And by the way, the ratio between the two is way much in favor of bank money. You know, commercial, central bank money is 1, commercial bank money is 6, right? That's more or less the ratio. So once CBDCs are out, you will see an enormous amount of stablecoins being issued. Not everybody, not all of them will survive. Let's be clear. There will be a fair competition on who's the best and more stable and more reliable form of stable coins out there, but there will be plenty of them, and they will coexist, because when stable coins get into trouble, as they will, the same way banks get into trouble, then what do? You will switch from stable coins to CBDCs. The same way when crypto are in trouble, you switch from crypto to stable coins. So you do need your own lender of last resort in the digital space, and that is going to be, again, as usual, the central bank. Instead of giving you cash or reserves, they will give you CBDCs. That's how the digital world would effectively replicate the physical world we see today.
Fantastic, and always very insightful. I can't really thank you enough for spending this other 15 minutes with us, telling us your views about the digital assets future. Fantastic. Speak soon, Brunello. You know that you're not gonna get free of me easily.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.